Hello and welcome to episode 224 of Page 1, the Writer's Podcast. I'm Marco, and regular listeners will be expecting to hear Tarek's voice as well here, but he couldn't make it to record this intro and outro part of the podcast, but he is in the main part of the podcast. If this is your first episode with us, thanks for joining us. On this podcast, we like to speak to writers of all kinds about their writing careers, find out how they got into the industry, and try and get as many hints and tips from them as possible. And we've got a huge back catalogue of guests, nearly 225 episodes, so please do check that out if you haven't already, because there's bound to be some guests that you are interested in hearing from. No doubt including today's guest, Stuart MacBride, who is obviously the best-selling Scottish crime author, known for his characters Logan McRae and Ash Henderson, and he is back with his latest Logan McRae novel, This House of Burning Bones, which is just out, so you can go and pick that up now. It's a really great chat with Stuart, but before I tell you about it, I should say that there were some technical difficulties when we recorded this one. First of all, Stuart couldn't get his microphone to work, so he had to record just using the mic on his headphones, and also there was a huge delay between us asking the questions and him responding, which made for a rather painful edit, it's fair to say, of this one. But hopefully I've done a reasonable job at making it sound like a flowing conversation, because it is a really interesting chat that we have with Stuart. He tells us all about how he first got into writing, and also about how he plans his novels, in the sense of he always likes to start with the cover copy of his novels. That's his starting point. So and then we get on to topics like talking about, the whole true crime interest that the public seems to have, and whether or not that is a good thing. It's a fascinating and interesting and fun chat as well. So we'll get straight into it after a quick advert for our writer's notebook, and then we'll be back at the end of the podcast with a bit more chat and to let you know about next week's guest. But as Tarek would say, on with the podcast. The blank page. To some, it's terrifying, an obstacle to overcome. But we prefer to think of it as an opportunity, a blank canvas to be filled with all of the adventures and characters in our head. So how to overcome that fear? Well, we all know the best advice for a writer is write. Seriously, get words on the page and more will follow.
But what about later, when you start trying to pull those threads of what you've written together? What about the character you wrote about way back at the start? Who was she again? What was she carrying? And where did she leave the MacGuffin that she now really needs in the third act? Think about all those top thrillers you like to read, or that amazing drama you just watched. What did they all have in common? Structure and planning.
As aspiring writers ourselves, we've tried many different methods to try and organise all the thoughts about the stories we want to tell. We've been there searching for a piece of scrap paper to note something down, or making a quick note on our phone in between meetings.
Or sometimes we'll make a note in whatever notebook we're carrying, or a document on our laptop, so we don't forget that great idea. Let's be honest, it can all be a bit messy, and it's easy to lose track of everything. And that's when we realised it's not just a story that needs structure and planning, but the way we gather all of our thoughts about it as well.
And so we made Page 1. Page 1 is more than just another notebook. It's a place to put down all your ideas for your latest project, divided into easy-to-use sections that will help you plan your story, so that when that blank page comes calling, you're ready to answer. And then afterwards, once it's written, we realised you need to plan how to let people read it, so we included a section relating to submissions.
Each one is designed for one project, whether you want to write a book, screenplay, a comic, or any other kind of story. We truly believe that when you use it, it will help you get to the main event, writing your story. So we hope this helps.
We can't wait to read what you come up with.
And remember, every story starts with Page 1.
Did you always want to be a writer? Because I think I'm right in saying that you studied architecture when you went to university. So was that an ambition, or was the writer thing always the thing you were actually wanting to do?
No, I'd never wanted to be an architect. That was my grandmother.
Right. Okay.
She saw that when I was a wee kid. I was very happy with a big pad of paper and a collection of pencils, and that would be me for hours. So she obviously thought that the way to make money out of that is to be an architect. And so, as far as I was aware, that's always been the path that I was meant to be on. And I could not stand it. Not for me at all whatsoever. So, yeah, that wasn't to be. Went to university for a year, first year, at Harry Watt down in Edinburgh. And it was just a miserable time. Just not interested in this in the slightest. I would love to have done a fine art degree. That would have been nice. Mm-hmm. I wasn't writing at that point. It wasn't until I was in my mid-20s, I think it was. And I had some friends who were writing fantasy novels for a hobby. And they said it was fun and I should give it a go. And thought, oh, yeah, go on then. What the hell? So I gave it a go and I loved it.
Nice.
There is nothing like... Given the way the world works, there is only one forum in which you actually have complete control. And that's when you write. You decide what happens, you decide who exists, who doesn't exist. You are in charge of everything. You are God. Mm-hmm. And that is so unlike anything else in life. And of course, as soon as you start encountering an agent or a publisher and an editor and all those things, and then the complete control disappears. But for that moment of creation, when you sit down with the blank page, it was great. I loved it. And I produced an absolutely dreadful novel.
That's quite nice to hear, though, because so many people always talk about the blank page as a really scary thing, like the thought of trying to fill it or not knowing what you're going to do with it, and just the pressure, etc. Whereas you have a really nice way of looking at it, which is it's an exciting thing where it's your world, and you get to create and decide what goes onto that blank page. I quite like that.
Yeah, it's an adventure. Every single blank page is an adventure that you get to take, where you control everything. There will not be poisonous spiders biting you in the bum unless you want them there. So, it's not like going for a walk in Australian outback or anything like that. It's not something to be feared. It's something to be just enjoyed and embraced.
I think I'm right in saying that you wrote that first novel, but then you wrote another 3 novels before you got your first one published. Is that right?
Yeah, well, my first one was a comedy crime novel, which I am very, very glad that I did. Very, very glad that I did. I would love to turn it into something like a 4-parter for BBC Scotland. Very, very silly, very strange, but not very well written. But I learned, and I think that's something when people they ask, "Oh, have you got any advice for people starting out?" Yes, your first novel will be crap, and that's fine. It's allowed to be crap. It will not be. You are not going to sit down and churn out the great Scottish novel or any of that stuff. It's incredibly rare that somebody's very first piece of writing is actually readable. And that's fine. This is where we learn to write. It's by writing. Nobody would pick up a cello and expect on day 1, lesson 1, to be playing Brahms. There's a lot of horrible noises get made, lots of squeaking and scrocking, and then you get better and better and better. And that's what writing is like. Your first novel should be dreadful because that's where you're taking risks. That's where you're learning your craft. And your second novel will be a hell of a lot better than your first because you have applied those learnings. And the third will be even better. And so on and so on. It took me 5 novels to have written something that a publisher went, yep, we will publish that. The third one was later published. It was my science fiction crime novel. The one in between is, I think, just too weird. I have never submitted it to anybody. So,
is that Halfhead, your sci-fi one? Is that your third novel?
Yes, that was the one that I got an agent with.
Okay.
I wrote I wrote a sort of a prequel. That was my second novel, and I cannibalized most of it for Half Head, and still things expanded the world slightly. Knew much more what I was doing than I had with the second book, and so it's still crime fiction. I've always written crime fiction. It's just the crime fiction has been wearing a variety of different hats, some of which have been quite silly.
Yeah. But that's actually a good thing about crime fiction, which is, you can tell so many different types of crime stories and you can apply different settings to them. And it's actually much wider than some people seem to think it is. I think publishers can think very narrowly about these things at times.
Oh, and if you walk into any supermarket and you will see the lineup of crime fiction, and pretty much 60% of them will look exactly the same. The dark and brooding stock photography with a character in the middle distance looking away from the camera. And then there'll be the ones that are clearly, here's an illustration because this is quite cozy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And that's it. And everything looks the same. But it's a hugely broad church. You go everything from Joe Abercrombie's The Blade itself, and has at its core a big chunk of crime fiction, to Richard Morgan's Altered Carbon.
Yeah,
also crime fiction, just set way, way, way in the future. You can do anything with crime fiction you like.
Yeah, and Cold Granite was the book that your fifth attempt, which you finally got out there into the world, and that's the start of your Logan McRae series of books, which obviously you're world famous for now. And 15 books or so later, did you know it was going to be such a long series when you started? Did you plan it as a series? Did you think I would love this to be a big ongoing thing, or did you think this is a one and done? Let's just see what happens next.
No, it was just to have a go. At my agent, at the time before I obviously completely demoralised him and he went off to work for the Inland Revenue. But at that point, my agent, he'd submitted Cold Granite to HarperCollins, and it had sat on the pile for quite a long chunk of time. And then I submitted the next book to him, which was which is a sort of a weird urban fantasy, magic realism, very noir crime fiction. And at that point, he said, "Look, please, could you just try writing a straight crime novel?" So I went, "Give it a go." Then off I went and I had a think. And I ended up coming up with Cold Granite. And in the time it had taken me to write Cold Granite, the agency went through about 7 or 8 different agents. One of which was in the seat, wasn't in the seat long enough to actually reply to my email welcoming them on board. And then Phil Patterson joined, and thankfully he chased up HarperCollins to see if they wanted Half Head, and they were interested. But had I written anything else since, and I had just finished the first draft of Cold Granite, so that's what went into them, and they said, "Yep, we'll have 3 books, please." Wow. And world rights as well, which was freaky weird.
And after that sort of initial period of, first of all, writing those first books to find the first one that could be published, and then to suddenly land on that deal where you're getting 3 books, you're getting world rights sold. Did you, how did that feel? And did you have an idea where you wanted to take Logan McRae at that point?
It was very bizarre. As I say, I've always been a huge reader. Always. Never thought I would be a writer. So actually, I was slightly suspicious that I was being wound up, to be honest. And that this just, this isn't really true, is it? This is someone is definitely taking the piss here. And because it was a 3-book deal, it was very strongly hinted to me that it would be useful were this to be a series rather than a standalone. So I had to go away and do that sort of difficult second novel thing of to go, where the hell do I go with this now? So at that point, I still don't have a plan for Logan. I never have had. It's the only thing I know for certain is that he gets older in real time, which is nice as a writer because it means that between books things happen that I don't have to write about, but I can reference and I can use. So in some ways there's always an element of starting from fresh, because there is this hinterland of stuff that has happened when the reader's not been looking, and that's quite nice. People can fall out and fight, and you have no idea why, and that will be revealed through the book. And I can do things that I wouldn't be able to if one book just immediately followed the next.
Mm-hmm. And what's your process like? When do you sit down with and spend a few weeks planning out the novel and the plotting of it, or do you just sit down and just pants it and just see what happens?
Depends very much on the book. Because I was at HarperCollins, and then my editor left to go to come on, Stuart, this, Corvus. Because Sarah left to go to Corvus, I had one more book in the contract, and then I thought, well, everybody else has from the team that I joined with has left, so maybe I should take the big bold step and try something new. So I left and went to Transworld, did 3 books with them, and now hopefully I found my forever home at Pan Macmillan. And because of that, for sort of 5 years, I've got into the habit of being very careful about what I present to the publisher, my editor, that it's all, that it was all plotted out. And then I would write a screenplay based on the plan. Okay. So action, dialogue, most of the narrative is sort of hinted at, and so the action, and then I will novelize. So it's what back in programming terms we used to call compositional decomposition, where you start with a big picture and you get smaller down the details. So
okay. So if
functional decomposition, that's the word. It's been a long time since I worked in IT. That's like 20 years ago.
That's an interesting method that you've got there of actually writing a screenplay for the idea of the novel that you've got there. That's like taking a plan to a next level almost before you then actually write the prose. Are you a very visual? Is everything very visual when you're writing things?
Not really. No. It's. I suppose in some ways it's panic, because in case I have to change everything, it's much easier not to have to change all the prose, because my writing has always been actually shifting stuff about once the prose is done. It's really, really difficult for me because stuff is threaded all the way through. So unpicking it and getting it to thread again is a horrible challenge. But it does have the benefit that I'm not as precious as I would be. Because if I have to shift stuff about, I can shift stuff about. It's so the threads are not intertwined in the way that they will be eventually. There is, there are things that will be referenced in dialogue, and characters will change their actions based on what's happened. But that's much more straightforward for me to alter than the final narrative prose is. So I'm not quite as precious as I know I would be with having to make wholesale changes to an actual finished novel.
I read that you often, if you're kind of at a point where you're perhaps struggling with a plot point, or not knowing where to take a character next, you'll go to the supermarket and listen to other people's conversations, and by the time you get to the checkout, it's kind of resolved itself. Is that still something that you tend to do?
Well, that was pre-COVID, when you could kind of put a dampener on that whole thing. So you had to be sort of 2 meters away from everybody. There just wasn't quite the same opportunities for earwigging in. So no, I don't do that anywhere near as much as I used to. I used to do it on trains as well, and occasionally take a bus to somewhere I don't actually need to go to, not for the journey, but for the actual who's saying what can I steal.
Mm-hmm. And the latest book is This House of Burning Bones. Do you want to give us the pitch for that one?
Not really, no. I know I should do. Well, tell you what we should do, because I know this is a craft sort of focused thing. Where are we? When I talk about the functional decomposition, starting off with the very broad brush at the beginning, what I usually do is I start with a cover copy.
Right.
Because I have always written the cover copy for my books. And I know a lot of people, their editors will write it, or someone in the publisher's copy edit department will write it. That's my starting point for any book. That's what I pitch to my editor, because if I can't make it seem interesting from what would go in the back of the book, there's no point in writing it. So that's where I always start. Mm-hmm. And then my editor and I, we bat that back and forth, and we could change things. We know, well, marketing would like, I think, if we focused on this, so we jiggle things around. But by that point, the book is written, and everybody knows what we're talking about, and whether or not I have actually done what I said I would do in the cover copy, which sometimes doesn't happen. There are times I've put something in the cover copy because I thought, yeah, it's quite, that's okay, but it needs something more exciting on the back of the book. Mm. So I'll just invent on the spot something, and it might not actually appear in the book. So that has to be changed. So if I bring this is version 2.1, having gone through all the other versions with my editor Fran. The granite city is ready to burn, and all it takes is a single spark. In the heat of a blistering summer, Aberdeen's police are struggling. Half the force is off sick. All leave has been cancelled. Someone's firebombed a hotel full of migrants, and there's a massive protest march happening this Saturday. With officers dropping like flies, Detective Inspector Logan McRae is forced to juggle cases and run a major murder investigation with a skeleton staff of misfits, idiots, and malingerers until the top brass can arrange backup from other divisions. It doesn't help that the Aberdeen Examiner has just been bought by Natasha Agapova, a tabloid media tycoon hell-bent on blaming local police for everything, and she's more than happy to fan the flames. But as bad as everything seems, it's all about to get much, much worse.
Please tell me that's the voice you use when you pitch it to your editor.
Oh God, no. I used to do voiceovers actually properly on the radio.
Oh, did you? Oh, I can definitely tell. It's fantastic.
Down at the local radio station, North Sound. God, no, that was way too slow for them. If you cannot get a side of A4 into about 15, 16 seconds, you are reading too slowly.
It's like those medicine adverts on American TV where they show you the advert and then list off all the side effects in about 2 seconds at the end of the advert.
Oh, yeah, that's the speed of it.
And do you ever find yourself constrained by that, though?
As I say, I've ended up having a cover copy that contains something that isn't in the book. So I'm quite happy to change it. It's more like, I suppose it's more like a mission statement. Mm-hmm. This is the journey I expect to go on, but it doesn't have to be the journey that I actually take. But this is sort of the feel of the thing. So that's kind of why I will give my books a working title. Safe in the knowledge that by the time it hits marketing and publicity and sales, they will want to call it something else. And the rule is you are not allowed to change the title of my book until I have finished writing it. Okay. At that point, we can just go mad and we can change stuff. Fair enough, don't care. But until I have finished writing it, you are elected Admiral Poopy McPlophead if you try to change the title of my book while I am writing it. Because it affects the flavour of the words that I write. And I don't know why, because it's just what's written up at the top of the document. But that it changes how the book feels. The times that we've done it, I've agreed to do it in the middle of writing. It's not the same book after the title is changed as it is before.
Okay.
And it's idiotic. I don't know why, but it just.
I mean, you've written this long running series, 15 or so books now, and you said earlier that you have a real time kind of aging of Logan McRae's world. So a year in our world is the same as a year in his world. And I wondered, we're looking at, I think it's a 6-year gap between, or a 5-year gap at least, between All That's Dead and The House of Burning Bones, 5-year gap. And I wondered, what, was that a conscious choice to leave it 5 years? Did you think I'll maybe stop things now, or did you want to give him some time to breathe, to give him a chance of more things happening for you to play with when you came back to him?
It's a combination of things. Partially, it's down to the fact that if I have house guests by day 3, I really would like to strangle them. And at that point, I had been sharing my brain with Logan for about 16 years. And he needed a break from me, and I needed a break from him. Because I'm sure everybody has read a book where you can tell that the author is tired of the characters. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to write that book. Which has been one of the best things I think I've ever done is stop writing Logan, because coming back to him for the 20th anniversary has been fun. I have loved the way that I can stick him and Steele in a scene and they will bicker like an old married couple. I love that I can just throw Tufty into the mix and he will come out with bizarre nonsense and misquote Jabberwocky or bring up lots of Star Wars references and comic book stuff. And it just, I'm not going to say the characters speak for themselves because they do not. I am in charge. That's my job. They are not ethereal fairies that come down from the mist and live their lives magically somehow through my fingers on the keyboard. I'm controlling all this, but it's so much easier with those characters than it can be with somebody who's brand new and I'm sort of feeling my way into the world. And that was a lot of fun to come back to that after all that time.
But on the flip side of that coin, when you do step away from Logan and write something, especially a standalone, do you enjoy having that sort of, going back to what you said at the start, that blank page essentially to create something entirely new?
Oh, that's one of the wonderful things about standalones. Is you can do, when I wrote Cold Granite the first time, I consciously wanted it to be as if this was book 4 in a series. that there were all these things that happened in the past that happened in other books, and they might get referenced, but the characters know what they're talking about. We don't need to, because it's not relevant to the story that's being told now. But all this stuff exists. Even though I have not plotted any of it or planned any of it or know how it went, all of this is extant. This is there. And standalone lets me do that same thing every single time. And I love that stuff. I love that, the building worlds without actually having to put every single brick in place. You can just you can see the building in the distance. You don't have to design the flipping plumbing system.
One of your, I guess the kind of classic way that people always describe Scottish crime fiction is Tartan noir. It's kind of it's a phrase been used for obviously decades now and stuff. But and I wondered, what does Tartan noir mean to you? You know, what does it what does it say about the type of work that you write, and why does Scotland have such a strong connection with crime novels? So we know there's so many crime writing people happen from this place, and I wonder what is the reason behind that.
I wrote an article about this very thing for the Times a few years ago.
Oh, fantastic!
It's Tartan noir is it's a meaningless phrase, absolutely meaningless. It's great for marketing. It really is. But it doesn't actually mean anything other than this is a book that's either written about Scotland or in Scotland or by someone who's sort of Scottish. That's all. All of that is Tartan noir. The vast majority of it is nothing like noir. I mean, noir is noir is tragedy for the working classes. That's sort of its proper definition. We are looking at sort of Shakespeare. If you look at Macbeth, that's noir. Only it's fancy pants, upper crust people that it's happening to. All the American hardboard noir stuff, it's it's a specific thing, and there's very little of that actually gets written in, and partially because it's really difficult to be commercially successful when you write noir. I love noir. I think some of the best writing is the really sort of proper. Here is someone who has very little power in the first place, and everything in his life is about to absolutely go to hell, and it's all his fault, or it's all her fault. That's how the proper path of a noir protagonist goes. You know? So, and you can tell I'm sort of so it's like, ooh, isn't it lovely to torture someone horribly? But that, so Tartan noir isn't that. It's not. It's everything from here's a lovely little village in the Highlands. It's a cheeky chappy Bobby who's going to solve the poisoning, to here's a gangland thing set in Glasgow, or a drug thing set in Dundee. All of this is Tartan noir. It's just Scottish crime fiction, and it helps sell books, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a marketing term essentially, is what it's become. But yeah, it does. It has, as you say, it definitely helps Scottish authors or those types of stories. But I wondered about, I think I read that you hate researching or reading anyway about real life serial killers, and yet your novels obviously feature some grisly things. I mean, why do you hate the real stuff if that's what you then choose to write about?
I don't think hate's the right word, but I certainly don't enjoy it. I'm not a true crime kind of guy, and that's because I cannot see. I know some people read it for entertainment, and that's fine if that's how they sort of see stuff. But I cannot get past the fact that this stuff happened to real people, and the victim is somebody's son or somebody's daughter, somebody's loved one, someone's parent. Lives have been torn apart and ruined, and that is, I cannot help but empathize with that. And at the same time, I can also empathize with the people who do these things, because they are often utterly broken. You know, Jeffrey Dahmer was not a healthy man. He was, things were very, very badly wrong in his brain for him to do the things that he did. And what he did was horrible, but I can't help sort of feel empathy towards him as well as empathy towards his victims. So I don't find true crime a fun thing to read. And so it's some of the worst. One of the first books I bought when I started writing crime fiction was the FBI's crime classification manual, and Sexual Homicides, Patterns and Motives. So two of the Quantico training books, essentially. And some of the stuff that's listed there, very sort of matter-of-factly, it's horrific. Absolutely horrific, the things that people will do to one another. Sometimes because it fulfills a need for them, and sometimes just because they are able to justify horrors to themselves. You know, if as a species, if you can justify something, you can commit the worst atrocities possible, as long as you can justify it to yourself.
There's definitely a sensationalization.
That's brought me down a bit, hasn't it?
There's definitely a sensational. I can't even say the word now. It's sensationalization of true crime that is that I also find slightly worrying. You know, when you have programs on Netflix about Dahmer or whatever that are trying to glamorize some of these things, it's an odd thing that these people almost become mini celebrities in a way.
Well, it can always be a case of, John Wayne Gacy, for example. Name one of his victims.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People can't. Jeffrey Dahmer can't name his victims. Jack the Ripper can't name his victims. Peter Sutcliffe, nope. Mm-hmm. Harold Shipman. Fred and Rosemary West. Everybody knows these people's names, but what absolutely fucked up society we have. But these are the people that we make famous for doing awful, awful things. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. That's the great thing about crime fiction, because none of it's real.
Yeah. Although, does it make the research part? You say that you've read these kind of horrible FBI textbooks, and obviously looking into these real world serial killers and the things that they've done. Does it put you off wanting to write about that kind of stuff, or does it make you want to write about it in the way that you would wish society was dealing with that kind of subject matter more?
Well, I think the biggest impact for me has been the psychological things that these kind of manuals go into about the perpetrator.
Okay.
To actually start to understand that it's all very well saying that, I'm going to write a story and someone's going to cut men open and fill them with those these little dogs that go yip 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 yip. Battery operated
jump
dogs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll do that, and it'll be really sort of scary, and the body will be lying there, and the chest will be going. But unless that makes sense for someone to do it, and it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else in the world, but it has to make sense to the person who does it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest thing that I took from all of those manuals, is that the person that commits the crime is a person. They are not a monster. They are a human being. They had a mother and a father and a childhood, and it may well have been completely screwed up, but they are a person, and that's what makes them scarier. That makes them far scarier than Dracula or Frankenstein's monster, because they are just like you and me, and they might be living next door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think when you read a story or see a movie or whatever, that where the person that is committing these crimes isn't portrayed as as something that is just purely black and white evil person, but they have a motivation for themselves. Now, it may be a motivation that no one else understands, but they have a motivation. It brings depth to the story, and it makes you much more engaged with the story, I think.
Yeah, well, when I can very occasionally do writing workshops, and one of the things that we do, I usually do them with a friend of mine, Alan Buchan, aka Alan Guthrie, who really does write noir, and we've done a couple of sort of residential writing workshops up at Moniac Moor, and one of the exercises was we build a protagonist and go into what things make it work, but we also we do a sort of an antagonist workshop, which makes it sound like build the bear. And we go through all these things and I think the biggest thing that I hope people take away from it is when we ask them, and what does he or she love? Because until you get to that point, they just have a black hat and a twirly moustache.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually giving your antagonist something that they love that makes them real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I couldn't
it doesn't have to be sort of all fluffy and kittens, but just
but some sort of motivation. Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't let you go without asking about your time on Celebrity Mastermind, which you won on the subject of the works of A.E. Milne. I mean that must have been a lot of fun doing that, no?
No, it was not a lot of fun. That was no fun at all. Why would that be fun? It's basically taking an oral exam in front of where the invigilator is an incredibly grumpy old man in front of the entire nation. This is broadcast, and if you screw anything up, it will be put on a special clip reel that the BBC then puts out so that people can see you screwing that up forever. They don't even have to watch the whole programme. They will just watch this thing that goes, Stuart MacBride cocks up the following questions. It was awful. It was absolutely horrible. I'm not somebody who does pub quizzes. I don't like pub quizzes. I don't watch quiz shows because I think
why
there's a certain kind
did you
of
agree to do it?
who loves to show off. I was talked into it. by my publicist at the time. It would be a great thing to do and a great opportunity, and I should definitely do it. And it would be very much. And I came to my senses about a week and a half later. I said, "Look, I know you're very keen on this, but I do not want to do this. Thank you very much for the opportunity, but no." And then I was talked into it very, very strongly by several people, all of whom are sort of higher up the tree than me, and so I had to go and do it. Oh, God, the only benefit I can say that I got from it, is that without it, I would not have written Now We Are Dead.
Why is that?
Well, having spent about a month boning up on E. Milne and his life and his works, and all his ins and outs, his bits and his bobs, I thought there's no way in hell I'm letting all this go to waste. So I wrote what is my take on a Winnie the Pooh book.
Okay.
And Now We Are Dead is a D.I. Steele novel, and just like Winnie the Pooh, it's split into 10 chapters, each of which starts with so it's like chapter 6, in which we find out what happens when you microwave a small Yorkshire Terrier. and so it's all done like that. It all features characters from his real life. Characters are named after people from Milne's actual life. The characters from Winnie the Pooh are expressed through police officers, And yeah, there was no way I would have written that book had I not gone on Celebrity Mastermind. But also it means I now get to wind my wife up. Because I can go, I'm a celebrity. Look. I was on the telly. It says so. It's in the title. Me, celebrity.
But we probably won't expect to see you on future quiz shows then, I think. What else do you have in what's next in the pipeline? Is there more Logan McRae in the pipeline?
Well, having stayed off Logan for 5 years, I have decided that my current 3-book contract with PanMac is going to be sort of a trilogy. It's not a trilogy, and it's not just one big book that's cut into 3. It's more that each of the books you can read either as a standalone within the series, or events of one flow in to the next. Things are referenced, and stuff will get set up further in advance for the next book or the book after that. So there are things in this House of Burning Bones that relate to the Logan book that will be out the year after next, and also to the book I'm currently writing in the moment, which was kind of fun. Lots of Easter eggs as well in that, because it's the 20th anniversary. There's quite a lot of stuff that I don't know if anybody's going to notice.
Was it fun? Presumably that's revisiting stuff from the past. Was it fun doing that, reaching back and looking at that sort of stuff? Yeah, the only difficulty was making it subtle enough that hopefully people might not notice until somebody tells them. So I'm being very cagey not to say what they are, because I hate that when you get to the end of the DVD and they go, and now here's all the Easter eggs. Well, no. Yeah. The whole point of an Easter egg is that people have to discover them on their own. If you tell us what they are, they're not bloody Easter eggs. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. He's an angry old man.
What was the last book that you read?
The last book that I read, I have a pile next to me here. I've gone for the show and tell. The last one that I read all the way through is
nice.
Okay.
King Lake 350 by Adrian Hyland. Full disclaimer, I very much am very, very fond of Adrian's work. I know him. I have stayed in his house down in Melbourne. And this is a non-fiction. It's almost like a novelization, but it's non-fiction about devastating wildfires that ripped through the bush very near where he lived, and told with a lot of assurity because he actually acts as a volunteer firefighter in the area that this takes place. So highly recommend that. Very gripping, very thrilling, and a true story.
Nice.
I am currently reading J. Rayner's Nights Out at Home.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Very enjoyable. I feel like his restaurant critic writing. Kind of scathing, some nice recipes as well. Funny, very good. And I'm also embarking upon the Library of America collect book of Portis. Now, it doesn't look very big, but as you can see, the pages are wafer thin, and the text is very, very small. So it's everything from his major novels all the way through to sort of reportage and short stories as well.
Nice.
So, and if anybody watching is wondering who Charles Portis is, he wrote True Grit.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So
I'm very interested.
Both films were based on, meant to be one of the sort of the great American novels. So, given the absolute crap show the country is at the moment, I thought it would be quite nice to examine one of their founding myths.
And what about the last film that you watched? What was that?
Oh, the last film. That's a very good question. It was dreadful. Yes, it was. Oh, I remember what it was now. Lightyear. I thought it was
Buzz
going to be one of the
Lightyear.
films that I
Lightyear one.
bought to watch.
I quite enjoyed that.
Flippin' heck. Oh, you've gone way down in my estimations. Oh, dear Lord.
What was your problem with it?
I think that it is destroyed by its own conceit. And its conceit is that this is the film that Andy went to see.
Mm-hmm.
So that rather than make a funny, charming Pixar movie about Buzz Lightyear, the real Buzz Lightyear in space, they have tried to make an action-adventure thing with the occasional bit of buffoonery thrown in. And it just doesn't work for me at all.
Fair enough.
There are all these huge, long sequences that just go, none of this is funny. None of this is charming. Just get on with it. Pixar stuff. Ugh. What's with the vines? The creepers that come up and grab people.
Oh yeah. That's just the
So
fun
the
alien
first sort
fauna.
of 15, 20 minutes of the film, you can't move without these bloody things coming up time and time and time again, and then they just completely forget about them till the end of the film. They don't.
No, they have that. They
Why aren't they here?
Well, maybe that's true. Actually, maybe that is right. I can't remember. Yeah, fair point. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that 1 point there, Stuart. Against it.
Wait,
It's dreadful. It's a dreadful film.
what about the last TV show that you watched, or what TV show are you watching at the moment?
We have just finished a very, very weird Japanese thing that I am trying to remember the title of. It's something like Blessings of the Goddess on this strange new world.
All right, okay. Don't know.
No,
Except obviously the title is in Japanese. It's utterly ridiculously silly. Just animated nonsense. We're trying to watch What We Do in the Shadows, but our
that's
broadband
fantastic.
is so dreadful. We can't get through one episode without everything hanging and crashing.
it's a fantastic.
Which is annoying.
If you ever get it fixed, that's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I love What We Do in the Shadows.
I liked it almost.
Yeah,
as much as Lightyear.
we're about in episode 7, I think. Sorry, it's.
I'm just saying I enjoyed it almost as much as Lightyear.
No, I'm sorry. You're breaking up. I couldn't hear you there. I won't embarrass you by telling you what it sounded like.
The last thing we always do is a super quick fire either or, and I say there's no right answer here apart from one of them perhaps. But we'll start off with your two long-running series, McRae or Oldcastle.
Oldcastle.
TV or cinema?
TV.
Night Owl or Early Bird.
Night Owl. Forced to be an early bird.
Music
I've never
or no
caught a
music?
worm.
Music or no music when you're
Music.
writing?
Always music. Always music.
The last one we'll go for is paper book or ebook.
Paper. Always paper. Cannot stand reading on a device. I spend all day working on a screen. When I get to the end of it, I want paper. I want a lovely book.
Yeah.
I want something that I can biff somebody on the head with if they say that they've enjoyed Lightyear the movie.
Well, thanks very much to Stuart for coming onto the podcast. Really appreciate him taking the time to do that. And hopefully that was an interesting listen, despite the technical difficulties that we had. Hopefully you can even tell there were technical difficulties. That would mean that I've done my job right. You can pick up This House of Burning Bones now. It is just out. So if you're a fan of the Logan McRae novels, I recommend you go and do that. And next week, we're staying in the world of Scottish crime as we chat with the brilliant Kate Foster. Kate won the Bloody Scotland Pitch Perfect Award in 2020 which is a competition regular listeners will know that I myself took part in a couple of years ago. Her first novel, The Maiden, won her the Scottish Crime Debut of the Year novel and was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. Her new novel is The Mourning Necklace, and again, it's a Scottish crime novel. So, we chat about that. We chat about, bringing the light of historical fiction onto some lesser known female stories that emerge in Scotland's history. So it's a really great chat, so please do tune in for that one. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do take the time to rate and review us on your favourite podcast app, as that helps us to continue to get great guests on the podcast. And as I always let listeners know, we do have a Patreon. You can join up the Patreon for free to join our Discord, or you can support us, which really helps us to continue to make the podcast. You get all sorts of benefits. There's different tiers. Benefits can include, page one notebooks, books from past guests, early access to these episodes, video access if it isn't a video episode, and we've also now started doing a little bonus episodes with some of our guests as well. So you can check out the Patreon for all the details. But if that sounds of interest, that would be great if you could support us. If you want to get in touch with us, there are many ways to do that. You can find us on social media, or most social media, with the handle @UKPage1. If you are listening to this on YouTube, you can leave a comment under the video, or you can email us at podcast@rightgear.co.uk. And we'd love to hear from you. Or, of course, you can join the Discord and leave us a question on the Discord as well. But otherwise, have a great week, and we'll speak to you next episode. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode like these ones down here.
And if you want to get in touch, you can do so by finding us on our social media platforms up here, or drop us a comment way down below there.
But otherwise, thanks for listening, and join us for the next episode.
See you later.